Hey, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and welcome to a really cool edition of Footloose Friday. You know why? Because we're doing invisible zippers, and you get to be present for me finally finishing up a little bit, even on this dress that I'm wearing, where I hadn't closed up right under the zipper in like a really long time, and I've worn this dress a million times, but okay, I digress. So it's all about invisible zippers and when you want to put them in, why you would use them, and even that there might even be a couple different kinds out there. And by kinds, I mean brands, and sometimes, they look a little bit different than others. But I'm not going to drone on and on. Let's get to the presentation deck and let's get started.
So when you sign up for Footloose Friday, you get an interactive presentation deck that gets emailed to you. And this presentation deck gives you the instructions like you're seeing in the video and also links to other helpful things that you might like. Plus, you get a special discount code that you can use if you want to buy any of the feet that we featured this month. And usually we do a little project or we do our sample and we mount it to a pennant. So it's kind of something where we make something and then we have just a little bit of proof that yes, you can do that. So you can download this template here. And this month, I'm not really making the pennant with the zipper on it, but if you wanted to add the zipper onto the pennant, just make sure to stabilize it, put a backing on it, and that sort of thing. You can kind of check out some of our other Footloose Friday videos because they live right here on our YouTube channel if you want to see the process of putting the pennant together. What are you going to learn? Well, this month it is all about invisible zippers, like I mentioned in the intro. And invisible zippers can go in anything from pillows, clothing, home deck, handbags, all kinds of stuff. And I like to also think that invisible zippers are great for when you can't really find the right color in a standard zipper because very little of an invisible zipper shows. And if you need to just tweak it a little bit, you can always put a little bit of fingernail polish because that comes in all different colors, and you can color the tab of the zipper. Most of the time, the uses of an invisible zipper will be in a garment. So, like this green dress that you see, the netting up above is buttoned, but then the back of the dress still needed a little bit of help there. And so there's a zipper there. There's a zipper in lots of other items in pillows. I've put them in a pillow before. I've also done them as like a little hidden pocket inside of a bag. Now, there's inventive ways that you can put in a zipper. Let's have a look at a little costume that I made. So, this is a costume I made a while back, and it's got invisible zippers in two places, actually. So, this is the traditional zipper down the back. It was the best way when lining up the piping here, like this. And this dress has so many different overlays, and I lamented on how do I do that? But I ended up just putting the invisible zipper through all of the layers. And you can see here when I undo this seam or this zipper, it's a little tight there with all that bulk, but everything went together well. And when I put in an invisible zipper in a garment, I usually hand stitch the lining close to the zipper, just like I did on this piece. Now, sometimes you might see dresses with an overlay have the overlay just sewn like this, and then it's only stitched to the bottom layer. But this dress, I needed it to be totally smooth on the back like that. So, and this went in relatively well. I was really pleased with how it looked and how it came out. So this dress also has like these leg of mutton sleeves to it and these really cool, these were freestanding lace stitched in that sulky sliver thread. So it's really got this opalescent look. But for the sleeves, and pardon me, it's dirty because I have worn the heck out of this costume for days and days at day and days at cons. But the zipper on the sleeves was done so that it got really tight on my wrist because there's no way I could fit my hand through this. So I put, instead of doing multiple buttons, because it's important for me to kind of easily dress myself and everything, I put an invisible zipper here at the cuff so I could just slip it on and then zip the zipper. So that's another use of an invisible zipper. So let's just roll up our sleeves and get into how are we going to use these feet and what are some invisible zippers and what are our expectations of them? Now, there are more brands than just YKK and Coates and Clark, but these are probably the two most popular ones. The first thing is the Coates and Clark ones come in a package like this, and you're going to take it off, pull the staple out if there is one on some of these long zippers. They have a staple. And then there are instructions on inserting the zipper inside this. It's on this little guy here, like that. And then I usually press it so it doesn't have a bend in it because we want it to be, flat. Then, if we look at the YKK zipper, you can tell the difference because the tabs are shaped a little bit differently. And, that's fine. Nobody cares about that. But if we look, the zipper tape is a little bit thinner on the YKK and on the Coates and Clark, the zipper coils to the end of the tape here where it starts is 5/8 of an inch, whereas on the YKK zipper, it's more like 3/8 of an inch. So that can just mean that you're going to have to be a little bit careful when you're aligning things up to the top of like your skirt or your dress or something like that. If you're using this as a measuring gauge, on these, you're going to have to move them down a little bit. Also, when we take our Coates and Clark zipper and we open it up and we look underneath at the side of these coils, they open right up flat, just like that. And then we can clearly see, or you will be able to see when we go over to sew this, that little crease right between the coils and the tape. And it's pretty much that spot right in there that is going to be hidden with the fabric. When we do the same thing to the YKK zipper, and we turn this over and we go to unroll it, on the YKK zipper, there is an extra little piece here that kind of gets stuck sometimes under our invisible zipper foot. So that's a difference too in getting started with this zipper. So it's just things that you have to be mindful of, but sometimes you might only be able to get a YKK zipper and other times maybe only the Coates and Clark. So the feat that I want to feature this month for our Footloose Friday is the number 35 first and foremost. This is the invisible zipper foot with the little grooves underneath that are going to hold the coils. And you can see underneath there. So when this gets stitched, when we're sewing this along in our seam, we're going to open up that coil and it slips right into our foot and we're going to be able to slide it right down through there. And the foot does its job, opening up that coil, holding it into place so that we can stitch right in the ditch of the crease of our zipper. Now, I mentioned on some of the zippers, they might not uncoil as easily or whatever. So I have an alternative for you, and that is the manual buttonhole foot. Now, this is one for my 990 that is coated there, so I can do the 9mm wide stitching if I were doing a buttonhole. But both the three, the one without the code and the one with, have these grooves down the middle. And it also will allow us to kind of stitch and get that in just the right spot. Now, it doesn't hold the coil open as well, but it does do a fairly decent job of sewing in the invisible zipper. So what I recommend is that you have both of these feet. And of course, if you're participating in our Footloose Friday and you've signed up for the club, you're going to get your special discount code to get 25% off both of those feet. Now, another thing you're going to need is When you sew your zippers in, you're going to leave your entire seam open. So for instance, I've simulated a little piece here that we're going to stitch. And so we're going to pretend that this is the top of our work and this is the bottom. And so when we go to sew these two pieces together, we are not going to sew any of the seam at all. We're going to leave everything open. We insert our zipper and then we close up the seam. Well, in order to do that, I like to use a bulky overlock foot. This is the 12C to do that. And this little guy here, this hump, will go right over the zipper and everything. And obviously, I'm going to show you how to do this. And yes, yes, look at this. This is my old 12C foot that I've had forever. Look, Bernina, through the years, they changed the way their coating pieces were molded there. So this is the old style. It's still working though. I'll still take it. Now, let's put our first zipper in. So this is a satin back crepe silk, and this can be a little bit of a challenging fabric to sew with, okay? So I like to make life a little bit easy for myself. So I've prepped this. And this is how I would do this if I were going to put a zipper with it using this stuff in anything I make, is I took a very slender piece of fusible interfacing. So it's about 1.25 inches, and I pressed it wherever the zipper is going to go. I didn't go all the way down the seam. I just went to here. And this is really going to help keep things stable as we sew in our zipper. It's also going to keep the fabric here a little bit stronger as the zipper would be worked up and down. You know, if this were a skirt or whatever, this happens to be the fabric that I use to make my wedding dress. And so the skirt has a waistband and all of that stuff. And then there's a little invisible zipper in the side of it. And I put it in just like this. So I'm using one of the Coats and Clark zippers. And the one thing to remember is we are not going to stitch this fabric together. We're going to stitch the seam together after we place the invisible zipper in. So before we set up our machine or do anything like that, all I want to do is, number one, determine what the seam allowance is. And on this garment, it's 5/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to use my standard sewing foot and a straight stitch with thread that matches my fabric here. And I'm going to stitch a stay stitch 5/8 of an inch away from this raw edge and this raw edge down both of these pieces.
Now I'm switching over to my number 35 invisible zipper foot with the little grooves that are cut out for the coils. And I'm also remembering to tell my sewing machine that I'm using the number 35 foot. And then the idea is that when I place this, so we're looking at our fabric here from the right side, and this is the right pattern piece, right side up. Well, the zipper, I always recommend that you zip your zipper up and you envision it how it's going to go in the garment, right? So this is going to be going into the fabric like this. So if we folded this over, that's what it's going to look like in there. So we're going to take this and we're going to turn it right side down. And because this is one of my coat zippers, I can just line that zipper tape right up against the edge of where I'm starting, and that stay stitching, which is right here, I'm gonna put my coils right on top of that stay stitching. And it just so happens on a zipper like this, if I'm using a 3-thread wide overlock stitch, it's kind of right on the edge of that serging. So just, you know, a little trick that I use, right? I gauge it a couple different ways. And so now we're gonna open that coil and get it under our foot. And I'm just pressing to start sewing there with my foot, and that's going to hold it in my, that's going to hold those coils right there, and I'm going to just start stitching. And then I'm going to go slowly, just keeping the bend in these coils over that stay stitching. And I'm using a stiletto. That will help guide this because, you know, sometimes I just feel like my fingers are too gosh darn wide for sewing, right? And now normally on your garment, you would have a place where you have your zipper stop. So for instance, I usually buy my zippers a little bit longer than I need, and I cut them off and trim them. So for instance, if we are just gonna stop right here, right? Like let's say my notch was right here, I would just stop stitching. I have a little bit more zipper than I need, right? But that's okay. So now I'll back stitch, cut, and now let's zoom out. I'm gonna zip the zipper. I'm gonna take my zipper, which is nicely hidden there. And now it's time to take this other piece, the other side, and line it up with the very beginning of the zipper, just like I did on the other side. So let's turn it around and place my zipper tape right on it. And remember, I have that serging that also can serve as a guide, like this. And I'm just, I'm not pinning a lot with this because I let the machine do the work for me. But now we're going to go all the way down this piece, trying to make it as smooth as possible, matching our notches. So there's a notch, right? And here's a notch. And so now this tape is going to go right here, like that. And I'm going to pin, just to kind of remind myself where to stop and to hold it in place as I sew. So now I unzip the zipper again. And this time the coils are stitched on this left channel. So let's get everything squared away. Get that coil moved over there and my zipper foot down, knot it in place a little bit like that. Keeping your zipper tape right on that sewn line. And also minding the pinning where you're ending. So I kind of, if it feels like it's a little, like it needs to be straightened out, I give it a nice assertive press with my fingers here like this. And keeping it pinned. And there's my notch that I'm going to stop and go backwards and cut. So then, once again, we're going to zip the zipper. Ta-da! How pretty that looks. Now we're not going to press it quite yet, but totally invisible, right? Now we've got this bit down here that we're going to have to manage.
I wanted to bring this over here to the drawing board so that you can kind of see the process before we start sewing. I told you I like to use our Bulky Overlock Foot, number 12C or number 12. And the idea is that we're curling this zipper over. We're kind of folding the zipper in half and we're folding the seam allowance over here. And then as we stitch, we're going to stitch and align our needle in position with our stay stitch. We're going to get under here and pull our zipper out of the way and stitch, 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 stitch to complete that seam. I know my hands are kind of in the way here, but this is why we're using that bulky overlock foot, because it gets kind of right under, gets all that bulk, and it's able to sew, and we adjust our needle position to get it where we need to. So now let's take that over to the sewing machine and do it.
So the 12C is on. And what I'm really doing here, let's do this from this perspective now, is I'm going to align my stitches, my stay stitches together. And it's okay to pin. You know I hate pinning. And I'm going to line this guy up at the end. Okay, so our zipper ends here. So we're going to kind of tug that out of the way, but we're also folding the zipper. And so now I'm going to line this up under my foot. And we're not going to start too far up, okay? Just a little bit. And we're going to lower our presser foot. So it's like that. And now it's almost like we're sewing piping. And now I need to take my needle and move it. And I'm moving it all the way to the left. That's 5 clicks to the left. And I'm going to use my hand wheel to test where it's landing. I think I can come over a notch. That's good. And now, making sure that everything is just lined up perfectly, I'm going to stitch. And then you back tack. And now let's come forward, lining up our seam. Don't be alarmed at this weird look in my seam there. I actually fused my interfacing to the wrong spot on my fabric, so that's what you're seeing there, the residue. Okay, so it's the moment of truth now. So here's where our zipper ends, and here's where we finish the seam. Look at that. It's perfect. Let's press it and have a look at the drawing board.
All right, look at this. What do you think? So let's unzip. There's where it stopped, right? Not a blip at all. Some of you are probably wondering about shortening the zipper. So here's our zipper, and it's a little bit longer, and that would kind of get in the way on something, slinky like this. So what I will do is just a little bar tack over the zipper, and then we'll cut it.
And I'm keeping my number 12C foot on, and now I have selected stitch number 25, which is a bar tack, and I'm going to use this bulky overlock foot to just go over those zipper teeth, and now we're going to stitch. And this is one of those stitches that just stops on its own when it's complete, so then I can cut and trim my tail to shorten.
Now, quite often, people will ask, like, well, why would I do an invisible zipper rather than a centered zipper? and a lap zipper. Well, here's a case where sometimes you might have something that's totally fitted. So I've kind of simulated a waistline here, and you need to put a zipper in there somehow. And honestly, I just simply think that this is the easiest way and the best way to do any side zipper or any zipper where there's going to be a curve like this. And it looks better and it's neater. So another thing while I'm here, I want to show you is there are some patterns for a more fitted top, like a sleeveless top. And there's always like in commercial patterns, you know, they put buttons in the back or buttons on the side or something like that. And because with a tight fitting shirt, you have to either button it up somehow because, you know, to get it over your head, you need to open that up. Well, you have an option if you have an invisible zipper. And I used to do this a lot in like when I did bridal. I actually put the zipper in upside down so that the tab goes at the bottom here. If this were, you know, the top part of the shirt and this were like the underarm or whatever, but this way you can still slip your body through the top, but you're opening up the bottom here to get it over your shoulders. So this is also an acceptable way to put a zipper in, this little up down method. And it could be at the side or it could be at the back of the shirt. And typically you get a longer zipper like this one, and you would start the end of the zipper here kind of at the top of the shirt, right? You know, so the whole back opens up. You don't want to open up just a short area. This is just my little sample here. So, but regardless of how you put this in, whether this is going to be something that opens up under an arm or if it opens up down here, the same applies to what we just stitched with our white sample. Now, remember I talked about doing a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance or a 3/8 or whatever. So if it is indeed a 5/8 seam allowance, then this zipper, this is one of the YKK ones, is going to have to start a little bit further down the seam like this. And then it's also going to be starting in a little bit over. So let's do our stay stitch first. So I've made some marks here where I'm going to start my zipper teeth. So that means that on this side, my zipper teeth are going to start right at that line, and then my coils start right here. Now, this time I don't have that serged, but that's kind of how my zipper is going to sit there. And now this time I'm going to switch to, I'm going to start with the invisible zipper foot and see how well this works on this zipper type. And my little stopper is coming up here, so I want to make sure I unzip it all the way. There we go. There we go. Okay, so there we can see that curve stays intact like this, so we'll add the other piece. And I'm matching my zipper stop indicator line. And the zipper coil start there. And then we're going to unzipper it.
And this 35 is working perfectly on this, so we won't have to bust out the manual buttonhole foot.
You can see hidden. Now, this is a little bit maroony and this is purple, but sometimes we can't find just the perfect color. So you can also take a little bit of nail polish to help that along to be more purple if you wanted to, but I think it would be fine. And then we can see just how invisible that is. Now, I haven't closed up the bottom yet, but we are going to do that in the same fashion that we did our other piece. We put that number 12C foot on, we line up our stay stitching, and we complete that edge. Now, remember, I'm using white thread, and I see just a touch of it, but look how good this technique is. So if we had a magenta thread in our machine, this would be awesome. All right, so let's look at something I've already made here. And this dress was made in a way where I had already stitched the bottom of the dress and everything, and then I added the zipper later. And sometimes, guess what? I've worn this dress a million times, but I never closed up this little area like this. So if you have something like this or whatever, all you have to do is take your item, turn it inside out, just like we did here. You can see that I probably have to shorten my zipper and all of that stuff, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to roll it around, line up our area, and stitch that with our number 12C foot and shorten our zipper. So I can't tell you how long this has needed fixing, right? So, yay, you for inspiring me to get that out of the way. So here's an example of an invisible zipper that's going inside a bag. I'm making something, it's a work in progress, but you can see here as we poke in a little hidden zipper inside a bag. And now there's a lot of you that would probably want to do this technique for a pillow. And here's an example. This is a piped pillow. See the piping there? And the zipper is totally hidden. Now, here's the trick with this one. So as we open this up, you're going to see totally invisible on this side. However, we didn't stitch as close to the zipper coils on this one because it's really kind of hard to get that piping really close. But the piping is so thick, it really covers it on that side. So I use a zipper on one side or the bulky overlock foot on one side and my invisible zipper foot on the other. So I whipped up a quick little pipe pillow here for you. And so this is the bottom because that's where I joined my piping. So that's the bottom. And then this is going to be the bottom of my pillow here. So I have a zipper that is just a little bit longer than our piece, and that's fine with me. And so I'm just going to stitch this The seam allowance that I'm using here is 1/2 inch, and 1/2 inch is about the edge of our zipper tape. So I'm going to just line that right up and use my invisible zipper foot to just stitch. I'm not even doing my stay stitching. I'm just going to stitch that right to the edge.
So you can see here, I'm starting the zipper a little bit off the edge of the back of our pillow. The back of the pillow is the portion that doesn't have the piping.
So now let's zip this. It's really important to zip it so you make sure that you're attaching things the correct way. So now we're going to be attaching this guy. If we lined up our raw edges here and we line up our edges here, now we're going to stitch. So now I'm going to put on my 12C foot and just stitch as close as possible, but I'm not going to try to get the ridges of these teeth.
As close to the teeth as possible, but not stitch into the coils at all. And we also want to make sure that we are catching this here. So we'll get some of that as we go around the curve when we sew our pillow together. But for right now, I'm just using the side of my presser foot as a guide on this cording. So now as this comes off the machine, I want to curve around here on both sides. So I'm going to unzip my zipper halfway down. And now let's have a look at this at the drawing board.
So here's my pillow. I've sewn the zipper to both sides, but now I'm going to keep that foot on my machine and I'm going to stitch right on top of the black line so that I can sew all of the part of the pillow together around this curve. And then some of this zipper, will get stitched in with the curve and that's fine. The same with the top here, but that's okay.
Right with my black stitching. And I might even move my needle position over just a little bit to be more in line with that little groove on our foot. And this is the 12C. Now, you can use a 12C even if you don't have a machine that can take the coated feet, and that's because that little dome under there is thick. So you can still sew thick piping with a 5.5 millimeter machine. And I'm just lining all my raw edges up together. Okay, so now you can see I'm getting down here to the beginning of the zipper. So I'm just folding it over like so, and I'm going to sew to about where the curve starts. Right about there, and stop.
And so let's have a look at what we've got here. And remember, it's important to unzip so that you can reach your hand here and unzip all of the way. So I'm just going to turn this inside out. Oh, this looks good. Nice little rounded corners. Even down here, they're nicely rounded. Look at that. And here. And then we can zip it up. And there's our pillow. Totally hidden zipper. And now I probably should have used a black zipper here to match the piping. But you know, at the end of the day, it's at the bottom of the pillow and it doesn't matter much. But I just wanted to show you this because now this was easy. This was literally just like 3/4 of a yard of fabric. I did interface it with some fusible woven, but a quick little project. And yes, we do have this pre-made piping at the store, so I didn't even have to take too much time in making my own cording. So now I can stuff this and have a little throw pillow on the sofa.
Okay, so I hope that this tutorial is going to have you using invisible zippers on almost anything that you make, because I can't tell you, they are a game changer when it comes to making apparel and things like that. You're just going to want to use them all the time. All right, if you want to see more videos just like this one, don't forget to check out our BERNINA of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/BERNINA of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. And you know, one more thing that you're going to want to do, you're going to want to hop on over to BERNINAofNaperville.com and check out Footloose Friday and see if you want to sign up for the course. It's only $15 and it includes a discount coupon on the 3 feet that we used. All right, I'm really leaving now. Bye. Go put a zipper in something.